Hi, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Brewers and Locked On Padres. The first time we had a chance to do a dual crossover here, and Javier Reyes is joining us right now from Locked On Padres. Lots of expectations of the Padres. Javier probably more so than the Brewers, and the Padres went on a spending spree and spent on, and they got some stars in that team. But I mean, you guys are really looking forward to, I know, a huge season off to maybe a little slower start, 7-6 so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have been the kind of story of baseball in a lot of ways, outside your individual like greatness players. As a team, just a total turnaround, and then you just have this blockbuster. Like this is the type of thing that they start off like ESPN 30/30s with, right? Where they talk about all the great expectations and a city that have been miserable for so long. That's kind of where the Padres are, and they haven't been bad by any stretch. I think that there's been other teams like the Mariners and maybe the White Sox for some people that have started off a lot more disappointingly. But the Padres, they've just instead been kind of staying afloat. They've had some disappointing players, especially among their star group, I think, and then it's kind of their bullpen and a few other pieces. But for the most part, they're still hanging in there. And at this point in the season, that's kind of all you can hope for is at least just don't be, 0-12. You can't be, not everybody can be 13-0 like the Rays. But I guess you just have to hope that you kind of just hold the pieces together because it's a marathon, not a sprint, as they always say.
Oh, well, it is. Like for me in our division, I always just keep one eye on the St. Louis Cardinals. I suppose for you, it's I know Arizona's off to a decent start. I don't know how long that's going to last. They got a good young team, but you probably keep like one eye on the Dodgers all the time, don't you?
Oh yeah, I mean it's just kind of like this with the Dodgers thing. I mean the rivalry's crazy. I know the Dodgers fans every now and then get annoyed when you say rivalry because they like, well, that implies that you've ever been a threat. Well, of course, I know, but I don't think that a nascent rivalry means that doesn't count, right? And I think that they also like to talk about the Padres a whole lot for a team that allegedly doesn't care. So I think that it's always been that, big brother, little brother, but now it's like actually legitimately a competition. And then past couple years, you had the Padres collapse in 2021. They had their breakout into the shortened season in 2020. And then last year, a real like kind of they're here moment when they beat them in the playoffs in 6 games. So that was really cool. Very much loving that. Still loving it, to be quite honest with you. I don't care if it happens like 6 months ago. It still was awesome. But yeah, definitely focused on them. And they're, as always, a team that kind of finds a way to bring talent out of nowhere, seemingly, with guys like James Outman and Jason Hayward kind of bouncing back and whatnot. And it's a little frustrating, but you have to play the season, man. It's really tough. But I think that the Dodgers, they're just that giant, thick, just dragon that they're trying to slay. And hopefully they can this year.
You've been listening to Locked On Brewers and Locked On Padres. I'm Chuck Freimund, Javier Reyes, covering the Padres as well. We appreciate you guys making us your first listen every day on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are free and available on all platforms. You see the email address on there on if you're watching us on YouTube. Mine is Chuck Freimund, Freimund. And his is H. Well, why don't you read that? That print is so small, Javier. Go ahead.
It's a JAVIIPENO, Javapeno, for those who like really clever, I guess, Twitter handles and whatnot. But yeah, that's where you can find me, and at @LO_Padres for the Twitter account as well.
And where mine says shortstop ball. I am not shortstop. I'm just flat out Chuck Freimund.
Yeah, that was a little bit of an error on my Photoshop skills, I guess we could say, on my part. Shout out my previous guy, Jake Bastriani.
That's right. Well, in here, the same. Who the starting pitcher is going to be? This is. We're afraid we're going to throw a good start in this 4-game Diego.
Not going to lie to you. You cut off a little bit there. So can you just repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. I said, Brewer fans, we're a little worried at the end of the series with the Padres because expectations, how good they are. And we just don't want to throw away our good start by getting swept this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those series where, like, a lot of people, the Brewers have never been, and by my approximation, they're just not a team that's viewed as being one that has like all these stars. They certainly have players that are just as good as other stars in the league. I think Willie Adames is pretty underrated in a lot of ways. You've got Burns and Woodruff, obviously, but it's a rotation thing for them for sure, I imagine. And with good defense, obviously we have your boy now, Josh Hader, on our team, which is pretty wild. I imagine we'll get into that more later. But yeah, it's a big 4-game set because I think the Pods, they still have been waiting to just have a series where they fired on all cylinders. They kind of had it with the Braves for the most part, but there's still a lot of questions with the Padres, I know for sure. And it comes, for me, a lot of it has been just Manny Machado and Juan Soto, both of them just haven't been their superstar selves. So maybe the Brewers might get a little bit fortunate on that front. So while Brewers fans, you might see the lineup and be really terrified, I think that I would tell them, look, both Soto and Machado, Soto more recently starting to heat up. He hit a crazy, like 453-foot bomb the other day that I was at the game at Citi Field. And then Manny he's got like a 600 OPS. So you might catch the Padres at a good time. And they still don't have Tatis. He's going to be back in a week or so. So, I would just, every team that I play, I don't think the Padres have hit that level of their ceiling yet. They're not like rolling, I don't think. So I don't think that they're a team that necessarily anyone should fear, at least at this point in the season.
Well, I mean, they got talent. And like I said, I just don't want to go in there and drop. I mean, if we came out of there with a split, I would totally be good with that. But, I want to ask you about Hader after the break coming up here because, and the trade to San Diego ruined our season. Just ruined our season last year. Still very. So we're going to see it. Motors sponsor make player situation comes to your every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts is head to eBay Motors. With eBay guaranteed, you can make sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only apply. Locked On Padres on the crossover, previewing this big 4-game with our Brewers team. I mean, we're not a team that's going to get out of headlines. You're not going to see us on MLB Network unless something extraordinary happens. We're not going to be so. And this relationship here ever, and one World Series, never a World Series title, and one World Series appearance was 92 when I was a kid. So, anything you need to know about our team?
Oh, absolutely. Because you kind of just illustrated for me, which is that they're not necessarily a team that grabs the headlines. I mean, I talked about Adames a little bit just as a spectator, but this is a team, the Josh Hader trade happens, the Corbin Burns situation happens this offseason, which was pretty rough on a lot of levels, I think. But I'm wondering, I guess in terms of just this series and this team, what are some players I think that Padres fans should kind of watch out for? Aside from maybe some of the obvious ones, just some guys maybe in that lineup, because I know that the Padres pitching, little weird, not bad, certainly not bad, but they've been a little bit up and down. Blake Snell hasn't been all that good. I don't think he's going to be in this series, although I imagine Michael Wacha will be. Who are some kind of players in that lineup that you think are either, being overlooked, maybe they're having breakout seasons? What do you think?
Well, Christian Yelich at the top of the order. He's a guy who's failed miserably since, he won an MVP. 2019, he injured his knee, and he has not been the same since. Kind of like with Cody Bellinger. I mean, these are two guys who are at the top of their games, Javier, and have just gone south. And you're familiar with Bellinger being a Padre fan. So with Christian, it's the same thing. Some days he looks great, and some days he can't get out of his own way. He had a couple of hits the other day, but then he's been called out looking more times than I want to view, because I'm getting tired of him looking at called strike 3. Rowdy Tellez, their big power guy, but we're talking about a guy who's in the number 3 spot in the order, hit 35 home runs last year, but batted .219. He's batting 147 and a ton of strikeouts so far. So they're 8-4, despite their 3-hitter or 4-hitter when he bats the 4 spot, batting 147. They're going with a lot of young guys, Garrett Mitchell, Bryce Terang, Joey Weimer, and guys like that. William Contreras is the catcher. They got him in a trade with a 3-way involving Atlanta. That was their big offseason pickup. But the story here with the Brewers is mostly their starting pitching. It's just, can they get enough offense? Now, they've had offense, but they've been shut out 3 times so far this year. But if this team is going to remain in the race in the NL Central, and we got a long way to go, as we always say, they need better production out of Christian Yelich at the top of the order, because some at bats, he just can't get out of his own way.
Yeah. I mean, the Yelich thing, and the Cody Bellinger comp is perfect. It's just these guys that, I mean, at least with, Christian Yelich, there was a couple seasons, already be an on-base guy and whatnot, but Cody Bellinger falling off, not that I'm happy about it. I don't want to root for players' declines necessarily, but that's like the only break.
Oh, you guys hate the Dodgers. I get it.
Yeah. But like Bellinger's decline is kind of the only break that the Padres have had when it comes to facing that team. Like, this is an MVP candidate who quite literally is just among outfielders, like one of the worst offensive players in baseball now. And I don't think that Chicago Cubs is going to change that. And with Yelich, it stinks. I mean, he was amazing. He was electric. He would steal bases too. He had a lot of clutch hits. I remember it was really fun to see him. He even had the little Pete Davidson stuff going on, which just sort of like, just going a little viral. That was just kind of fun, right? It was fun to see all of that. And now it's not the same. And I know with the Brewers pitching, I know that they just went to town on the Mets for a couple games. I was just getting MLB home run notifications like nonstop for 2 days. Look, what's going on? I thought that Max Scherzer's pitching. But with the Brewers, it's Peralta, it's Woodruff, and Corbin Burns. It feels like it's been that way for a while. Or is there another kind of pitcher, do you think, maybe whether it be a reliever, that the Padres have to look out for? Is there someone at the back end of the rotation? What do you think?
Well, Devin Williams is their closer, and he's really good. After we traded our number 1 guy to you guys, Josh Hader. Devin moved up from the setup spot, but with Burns is out of the rotation because he's on the injured list. He's going to pitch in the series. He's had 2 pretty good starts so far, but after you get down with 1, 2, 3, you're kind of watching the game, peeking over the kitchen table, because you're wondering what are you going to get from the rest of 4 and 5 out of this rotation. Eric Lauer, although Wade Miley pitched well in his last start, went 5 innings, and at this point in baseball, when a guy goes 5 innings and a number 5 starter, you're praising the guy, and that's what we're doing.
Take it, yeah.
So but the starting pitching has not been has been pretty good. The bullpen has been pretty good. It's been faltered here in the last couple of days. With you guys, I was really impressed with that series since Atlanta. Now, I thought you guys should have swept that series. Hader did not come. You had a lead going late in that game, and I didn't see any Josh Hader. How did Hader not get used a week ago Thursday against Atlanta? You guys blew a 6-4 lead. You had control of that game.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens sometimes. You try and save your closer, I think, for the right situation. And it was a little bit earlier in the game, so they figured, all right, the 9th is yours. And I guess that in fairness, they end up losing to Orlando Arcia, who hits the go-ahead hit. And with that really stacked Braves lineup, I understand being like, well, I think we could trust maybe our second best reliever or third best to take out the bottom of their order and then save Hader when you have to go up against Acuna and Olsen and Michael Harris, who's on the IL right now. But even still, like, that's probably what they were thinking. But I will say, even with that, just as a fan, that game was awesome. Like, it was just a really good game. There was all sorts of offense from both ways, really good plays, some good defense, like NLCS type of vibes to it. So, and getting that stuff like early on in the year is always a delight. So I wasn't that frustrated by it. And then they had the Sunday Night Baseball game, though, to make up for it. And it was kind of, I think that game might have inflated some stats for some players. Namely, I'd say like
you guys pouted them
being one of them. Yeah. And since it's early on in the season, some people look at that and be like, Nelson Cruz has how many RBIs? Well, that's because like 6 of them came in one game, right? And I think that's a word of note that there's still some weak holes in this Padres lineup. I already talked about Soto and Manny still trying to get it going. But when it comes to the rest of them, there's still some questions about, can Matt Carpenter hit, fastballs really well? He can hit off speed stuff, but is he going to be able to catch up to, high heat sort of guys? And I know that Brewers certainly have really good pitchers, so I'm curious to see how he does in that. And same thing for Cruz. And then you've got, Trent Grisham another former Brewer. You know what I mean? Just taking all. We've been really big trade partners past couple of years. Kind
We
of
have.
weird, underrated relationship, I think.
But I feel like guys leave here, and they go to you guys like Trent Grisham and become better. I would love to have Trent Grisham back. Although we have a ton of outfielders. We have an overpopulated outfield right now with young guys. Probably one of the best prospects in all of baseball as far as our outfield. You mentioned Manny. To me, this guy is the biggest threat in Major League Baseball at the plate. When he gets outs, are loud outs. So when that guy's at the plate, it's like, oh boy. I used to feel that way about Yelich. I don't anymore. But I certainly feel that way about Manny Machado. But I know he's off to a slow start. I just don't want him to turn it around this weekend against the Brewers.
Yeah, it could totally happen. That's what's so while I do tell Brewers fans, hey, they haven't got it rolling, you never want to be that team that they finally figure it out against. It's always really frustrating to be like, oh, great. The guy who's hitting 120 over the past couple games just decided to hit against us. I know that for the Padres, CJ Crone is like our number one enemy out of Colorado, who just literally just turns into Ruth whenever he plays. I'm not even exaggerating, just like one of the most valuable sluggers in the league, apparently, against the Padres. And yeah, I mean, he's off to a slow start, but it doesn't look like I think that's the interesting part is it's just a slow start. It doesn't look like any of the advanced metrics and hard hit stuff. It doesn't look bad at the plate. He's still searching, and he's made some good contact. The Mets game, the last game that the Padres played, he smoked one up the middle, but it was right to the second baseman, but he still kind of made good contact on it. So I think it's going to happen any second, and that really is surprising because one of the more consistent players, especially at third base for a while now. And he's still only like 30 years old, which is wild. So that is something that I would definitely look out for Brewers fans. But even if he doesn't, the defense is still awesome. He made this really great spinning play. I always joke with my friends and other hosts even sometimes. He looks like he just got out of bed like 30 seconds ago, the way he plays baseball. You know what I mean? He does like the light jog thing after the out. He does this. He makes everything look so easy. And I know that's an overused kind of descriptor for players, but it really is true. He's up at the plate. He does he's like this with the bat. Like he looks like he got up like 30 minutes ago. It's awesome. It's an absolute delight to watch. But I will say with Grisham and
Machado looks like he's not hustling when he does that stuff. When Machado's like that, it looks like to us, looks like guy's not hustling. And there's been times when he's been called out for that too.
Yeah, it's to me, it's one of those myth type of narratives. I've never liked that one. I understand the dirty player stuff from years ago that he thankfully cleaned up. He hasn't had any incident in like 3-4 years now. But with the hustle thing, my thing is like, yeah, but also next to Paul Goldschmidt, there's no player in baseball that has played more games since 2017. So for me, it's like, yeah. And considering how hard he hits the ball and considering that even at his best, he's not that fast. If he's smoking one to a shortstop, like right to the shortstop, I don't care if he doesn't like run super fast to first base, especially when he plays as many games as he does. But that's definitely been something that people bring up over and over for sure, even if I think it's a little bit of a unfair complaint.
Josh, I want to ask you about Josh.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about teasing that here a little bit. I'm going to ask you about him. I want to see how things are going with Josh because we keep it all we keep an eye on him because he's a household name here. And Rocket Mosers, try it free for 30 days, just enough time to try it. Rocket Money, what it does is it cancels a subscription for you, maybe things that you're getting charged for in your spending or your subscriptions, and it'll save you money. You shouldn't be spending with these things if you're not using it. And there are people out there, 80% of you know I about Rocket Money. Cancels, helps you lower bills all in one place. So don't be throwing money around, especially in this economy. It'll keep your money, and Rocket Money is going to help you do that. It'll cancel all unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/locklb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockdown. And again, download this. It's going to save you some money. It's going to find out things you're spending money on that you shouldn't be spending money on. You need to stop that right now, and Rocket Money is going to help you out. So again, go to rocketmoney.com/lockdownmlb. All right, Javier, when the Brewers first traded 278. It's up. It looked like Taylor Rogers. We had Taylor Rogers. We traded for your closer. He was bad here, no longer on the team, thank God. And you got Josh Hader, but at one point we wanted to just cancel that trade because it was so bad. So how have things been working out for Josh lately?
It's funny because when he first got to the Padres, I overreacted. It's probably been my worst call, but he was pretty disastrous when he first got to the Padres. It reminded me of, I'm in the Jersey area, so I'm used to hearing this. Aroldis Chapman a few years ago, and especially his last with the Yankees, just almost inexplicably just forgot how to pitch and was getting torched for at least 2 weeks. And then he was fine after 2 weeks. It was very, very odd. And that's kind of what happened with Hader. And I think that the thing that I was really of the opinion that I thought the Brewers, while there's a lot to criticize with the money spending and certainly just trading away your best asset despite being in first place, that when it comes to just in a vacuum, their trades, they've done a decent job. They've made some good moves every now and then. And I think that they've gotten an acquired depth and whatnot. So my thing was maybe they saw something and that's why they were willing to trade him. And it turns out maybe they saw a little bit. And I think what the thing that will be interesting in this series that you'll probably see as well, his stuff is still, you're like squeezing singles against him and that's it. His stuff is still pretty unhittable, but he tends to have been, at least over the course of being a Padre, when he does look shaky, he's beating himself. He throws against the Mets in the Mets series when the Padres barely pulled out a 4-2 win. He was walking batters, and one of the last batters he faced to end the game, every single pitch was a ball, but the batter kept swinging at it. Now that's a reflection of how nasty his stuff is for sure, but it's also like he can beat himself, especially if you have some guys who could be a little bit patient at the plate. So while I wouldn't expect like a Rowdy Tellez to be able to go deep off of him, if you just stay patient at the plate, I think that's where the Hader stuff starts to show a little bit, where he throws a little bit too high. He tries to maybe nibble, tries to sneak one by you maybe, instead of just relying on just throwing strikes because people aren't going to hit his stuff anyway. So that's kind of how it's gone for the Padres. Although he was very good in the postseason, and for the most part, he has been good despite those early moments for sure. And I think that, the Padres are very happy to have him.
Yeah, and Javier, the Brewers, I thought they knew it was not going to be long-term because they did not want to give him a long-term contract. And he was going to arbitration every year, give him a long-term contract. So you knew that Josh's days, like Corbin Burns' days, are numbered in Milwaukee. So, and you talked about Hader struggling a little bit when he first got there. That's probably carryover for when he got toward the end of his Milwaukee. Same thing. He struggled before we traded him to you guys. But still, we've seen him struggle before and bounce right. The great Josh Hader.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a phenomenal player, and I would imagine that he's gonna do well here. It would be, poetic in a way if the Brewers are able to hit him somehow, or if either way, there's a narrative there, to be honest with you, that one could pull from. If the Brewers just get destroyed, or if he gets lit up by them, and everyone's like, "See, this is why they got rid of him," and blah blah blah. The brilliant trade by the Brewers and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's still been. It was somehow because of the trade for Soto, a, dare I say, forgotten move at the deadline last year, where it just got kind of swept under the rug because then the very next day, the Juan Soto stuff happens. So that was a lot of fun. But I will say that Hader and Steven Wilson is another player to watch out for out of the Padres bullpen, but they've been a little shaky. They've had their moments where they've kind of had some blow-ups with guys like Nabil Crismatt. Robert Suarez is a guy who's really good for them, but he's hurt right now. Same thing for Drew Pomeranz, who's also hurt. So it's I think, going to be a great bullpen, but is certainly a little dicey so far outside of Hader. And I think Steven Wilson is a guy that, when watching, you'll be a little bit surprised. He's a name that I think people will be more acquainted with as the season goes on because he's got really good stuff.
All right, Javier, before we say goodbye here, we probably should go through the pitching matchups for this huge set here.
Let's do it.
Let me tell you about the Built Bar. The Built Bar. Looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever, Built Bar. You got to try it. Built Bar, especially if you're working out, you're going to go for a run here. It is high in protein. It is very good. And what makes Built Bar so good, Oh, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they're unbelievable tasting. They got the peanut butter brownie, which is my favorite, the cookies and cream. I don't know how Built does it, but they make these healthy bars so good for you. And now you don't need to wait to get it in a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built bars at built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can still get your specialty flavors still at built.com. So if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in, grab a 12-pack box, and hit all the flavors. The brownie batter puff, the churro puff, and you can thank me later, Built Bar. All right, as of you and I recording this, we still don't know who's pitching for the Brewers tonight. They were pushing everybody back in this rotation. So Lauer was so strong. I know some places have Lauer starting Thursday night games, but I see it's kind of an unknown who's pitching tonight. But I see Nick Martinez is on the mound for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Nick Martinez is an interesting story. His numbers, the thing with him is he's like a Swiss Army knife type of pitcher. He's been used in a bunch of different situations. I think that if he doesn't get a little bit better in the rotation, especially after Joe Musgrove gets back, who's another guy that's hurt, he might move to the bullpen, which is good because his ERA goes from like a 4.2 to a 2.6 in the bullpen. So I think that's what he's better used for. Occasionally they use him as a closer, maybe a long inning relief guy, but he tends to do better. So that's probably a game that the Brewers might want to jump on because Martinez is not necessarily as effective as a starter. He can do it, just don't expect, any fireworks or anything like that. He struggles with some control every now and then. As long as you avoid that changeup of his, he's not that bad of a matchup.
All right, Michael Wacha on the hill for the Padres tonight. And we know Wacha from his days with the Cardinals always has been a nemesis on the hill. Listed as Freddie Peralta, but that's unless anything changes again. They moved everybody up in the rotation. That's probably going to be Eric Lauer. And Eric was not good in his start Saturday night. He was not good in start Saturday night. Let's just put it that way. Gave him a couple of home run balls, 2-run shots, and that was it. But I see Wacha's off to a 2-0 start.
Wacha, look, first of all, his first, I think it was one of his starts, he got a little bit hurt by some bad defense on the Padres, so I think he gave up 4 runs against Colorado. Not necessarily all his fault. I'm not saying he was perfect, but, there was some, it doesn't show up in the box score, but there were some defensive issues there that might have contributed to the runs. But then he tied like his career high with 10 Ks against Atlanta. So the Padres brought him in to just be a stabilizing, proven arm. Not a guy who is one of their best, but just to kind of bolster the back of the rotation. And his last start was great. And that's why I have Pac-Man here, for people who don't know the sound effect that he makes when he's eating the power pellets and whatnot. So that's why he's on my set now. So introducing him for all my Locked On Padres viewers and listeners, if you want to check out the video.
Where do you have Pac-Man? Let me see that.
Do you see him?
Pac-Man's from my youth.
Kind of in the middle where I am. Yeah.
Yes.
The lighting is a little bit off, but yeah, he's just chilling right there. That's kind of what it's in reference to.
When I was a kid.
I know. Came up with it myself. I'm proud of it.
There you go. I like it. So for Saturday afternoon's game, Seth Lugo goes for you guys. And I guess it looks like Freddie Peralta will be the starter. And I told you earlier, Freddie pitched so well, but what can you tell us about Seth Lugo?
Hey, Peralta's an underrated starter for sure. You know what I mean? That's definitely one that I'm looking out for. Everyone talks about Burns and Woodruff, but Freddie Peralta, when healthy, I think has been pretty vicious. And then Lugo, he's the guy that the Padres brought in. And what I liked about him was a lot of teams were interested in him, and they gave him a little deal, and they're testing him out as a starting pitcher. And originally, he was a reliever. He was an electric kind of guy for the Mets, lots of strikeouts. And so far with the Padres, he's looked pretty good. The velocity stuff has been down for a decent amount of his pitches, but the movement is up. So this might be a reflection of him converting to the starting role, right? So he's not throwing necessarily as hard. He's changing his mechanics up a bit. But so far, 1.38 ERA on the season just has been kind of exactly what the Padres need. Don't need to be lights out. You don't need to be a superstar pitcher, and you don't even need to be what you were past these past couple games. But what I like is for a reliever who's converting to a starting pitcher, 7 innings and 6 innings, especially against the Braves of 6 innings. You would think he would only go 4 in his first couple starts because he's getting used to being a starter. I like that he's gone the distance so far. So not saying he's a superstar or anything like that, but definitely a strong start, and it bodes well for a Padres rotation that had a lot of questions when it came to the pitching depth, I think.
All right, and then of course on Sunday, again, Wade Miley might go, but again, the Brewer rotation's all messed up because Craig Counsell decided to give everybody a day rest, and I don't know, and who knows, maybe there's somebody hurt, another player hurt, but as of Thursday afternoon, we don't really know firmly what this rotation is like because I don't know. Maybe Wade Miley does go Sunday, but I see for you guys, it's you, Darvis, and another guy Brewer fans are very used to from his days with the Chicago Cubs. How's you been so far?
Hey, you is always a delight to watch pitch. He hasn't been incredible, 4.76 ERA on the year, but he had a little bit of a delayed start, like kind of because the WBC stuff. He just, I don't know if it was an injury and whatnot, but he just kind of needed extra reps and he needed more time. So he actually didn't start in the first go around for the rotation, which Padres fans aren't used to since he was basically the number one starter last year for a lot of it. But hey, he's got a big arsenal. He doesn't give up a lot of hard contact all the time, at least. When you do, it'll probably leave the park, but the incredible versatility with his pitches, as usual. I mean, he has one called the Supreme, according to him, which I love. So he's a guy that hasn't, like I said, which is kind of the theme. The Padres haven't necessarily entered that snowball going down the mountain momentum thing yet. So you might catch Darvish kind of still tinkering and figuring things out, but it's going to be interesting with this Brewers lineup for sure, because if they're not patient, then Darvish might do some work, and he's still capable of racking up the Ks, even if not as much as it used to be, but he can still go deep into games. So I trust him implicitly to figure things out.
Well, as we said at the top, huge 4-game series for both teams, really.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, again, I'm a little scared about this series, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun the next 4 nights. 2 night games and then afternoon games on Saturday and Sunday. But big early test for both teams, I would say there, Javier.
Yeah, absolutely. Brewers, not my favorite team in the world. They are always around, though. They find a way. So they're not necessarily a pushover. I don't know if they're a team that you're scared to face in the postseason, but they're certainly a team that in the regular season can play some good defense and just have great pitching. And we've seen crazier things before. So I would definitely look out for this series to be kind of an underrated one. And if you're a Padres fan, hopefully Manny Machado gets that first home run. I'd greatly appreciate that. We're waiting, my man. Come on.
Well, the Brewers might not be my favorite team once Sunday night comes. We'll see how the series goes. Hey, Javier, this is great hooking up. I appreciate this. Thank you. This is fun.
Absolutely. It's been
we'll hit you up. I believe. Are you guys coming back to? Are you guys back in Milwaukee later on in the year? I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. Everyone wants to see Padres
the way
Dodgers.
Figured out things.
Yeah, they refuse to schedule the Padres and the Dodgers early on. So it looks like they are facing each other relatively soon. Let me see if I can see that again. Cincinnati. Oh no, it isn't for a while. Never mind, I was wrong. I thought they played each other pretty close back to back, but it'll be a while before they face again.
They changed that around this year.
By then,
they changed.
Yeah. I imagine by then though things will have changed.
All right. Thanks for making us your first listen. Locked On Brewers, Locked On Padres are crossover here this afternoon, previewing this 4-game set. And now for your second listen, check out Lock On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Don every day as they give you the best fantasy strategies. Find Locked On Baseball wherever you guess and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's been fun, Javier. Enjoy the weekend. All right.